Action superstar Kevin Sorbo slams evil as Kull the Conqueror, a fearless barbarian warrior who through skill and bravery becomes king. Worshipped by his subjects for his mercy and adored by the beautiful fortune-teller Zaretta. Whoa, Karina Lombard. All right, excuse me. Hey, it is time for your Sovereign Tech Patreon-only Wednesday Q&A. Welcome to the show. Of course, the best in the world here with you, the podcast champion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, the Golden Stallion. Got to come up with a few other names. No, I really don't. I need to come up with names for all the ladies. But anyway, just got in the Blu-ray of Kull the Conqueror. Sometimes a couple quick points on this. And then actually the first question we have here this week, got some great questions. And the first one that we got in has to do with the movie, honestly. Of course, you can ask anything that you want on the Patreon Q&As. I know we have some new patrons on board. Welcome. You can ask about, literally just ask about anything. It doesn't have to be tech or science related, even though those often, or philosophy, those often take the cake. But Kull the Conqueror, some movies. So if you've never seen this, don't worry, it's much better than A Long Side Night with Kevin Sorbo. Fucking A. Anyway, this is a great movie. Growing up, Kull the Conqueror, let's see, this movie came out, 90, oh bloody hell. Don't they put the years on these? 97, there you go, that sounds about right. Not the first movie. In fact, I didn't see it alone. The first movie I did see alone was Hackers, actually. Was that 94, 95? That was a game-changing movie. We're going to talk about that in a second. Or talk about game-changing movies and tech in a minute here. But anyway, in 97, I went and saw this with my buddy who I always affectionately called Spock. His real name was Ryan. But to separate Ryan and Brian, I ended up calling him Spock, and my whole family ended up calling him Spock. It just kind of worked. Even though he, wasn't exactly like, an emotionless Vulcan or something like that. Oop, hit the microphone. Anyway, this is the first movie I remember he and I going to where like the theater was completely empty. It was just me and him and it was fucking empty. But what a great, great movie. I mean, this is just a championship film. Cheesy, very cheesy. Has Tia Carrere in it. That's worth it. And it has to do with Robert Howard's. In fact, last week when we were talking about H.P. Lovecraft, I mentioned that I was a huge fan of the Conan books. I'm actually a fan of just about everything that that Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft's one of his best friends, ever came out with. And not just Conan, but also Solomon Kane and Kull of Atlantis would be his actual name. I'm a fan of both of those works. In fact, I was always I remember when Spock and I went to go see the movie, we were like looking for ways of, okay, how is this connected to Conan, blah, blah, we're really like digging deep. But we were teenagers that were really into that shit, Sword and Sandal. This movie's really cheesy, but I'll tell you, it's the score is composed by Joel Goldsmith, not Jerry Goldsmith, but Jerry Goldsmith's son, Joel Goldsmith, who would go on to do a lot of work with Stargate SG-1. And Joel Goldsmith's score for this movie is fantastic. I am actually really waiting for the day when somebody does like a full-on remastering and re-release, because if you watch the movie, and I have another point quick to make here. We're only 3 minutes in, relax. If you watch the movie, there are some like heavy metal cues to the score, like literally where guitar riffs come in, pure 90s. You got to love it. And the soundtrack that Varis Sarabande released, which I'm glad they released it, believe me, because there's particularly there's kind of what would be a love theme in the movie that Joel Goldsmith composed that I think is just one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever put down. It's remarkable, particularly on the soundtrack. It's track 3. I think the title is Card Reading. When I was all right. So let me finish a point, then I'll tell you a little story. So what you hear, some of the music that you hear inside the movie on the soundtrack, it's the same. That it's a track for the same scene, but it sounds completely wildly different on the soundtrack, especially the first track, than what is actually in the film. What's in the film is way more intense, but then there's points where everything matches up completely. It's just one of those oddities. So I hope someday we get like a full re-release of this, much like the Conan soundtracks, have been re-released and remastered and even rescored by like Conan the Destroyer. There was the rescoring by the Royal Scottish Philharmonic. That is a fantastically well done. I mean, oh man, I remember when they rescored Battlestar Galactica for the 25th anniversary by Varese. That was stunning. Anyway, I hope that we get that someday, and then we can actually get the original music, especially that opening guitar riff is just so badass. I mean, I could rip it out of the movie, I suppose, if I really wanted to, but I want the full thing, and I don't need to hear the axe swinging and all that other bullshit going on in it. But what a sexy little film I've always felt Call the Conqueror was, and I'm amazed. All right, well, I got a story to tell you, but I will just say this. I'm amazed that this is on Blu-ray, because there's a lot of movies that have no Blu-ray release. This is not a big deal of a movie at all. I don't know why the fuck it's on Blu-ray. Like it's almost, I'm trying to think of what to compare it to that isn't on Blu-ray that should be, but this is. But anyway, it's always licensing, right? I have another comment about the Blu-ray thing too. But anyway, the story. So I actually used, from Call the Conqueror, like I said, that track 3 card reading, where it's that love theme. Na, 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 na. I mean, it's just remarkable. I might have used it in a Sovereign Tech intro at some point, in like one of the intros, segment intros. But I don't know that I did. Now that I think about it, I don't know that I did. Regardless, I did use it once. This was way back in the day, baby. I had I had a camcorder. I had a VHS camera. And I made a record, like I sent this gal at the time who we were polyamorous, but anyway, she was sort of breaking up with me, and I sent her a tape. I made a tape where I was like, just like saying something to her, saying how much I love her and everything. And understand, like this, it's not like today where you can make a video like nothing. You could use the Boomerang app or some other kind of bullshit, and away you go. And it doesn't really mean anything. At the time, we're talking, well, around 1997, 98, I guess, maybe 99, somewhere around there. This was, the ability, I mean, it was one thing to take pictures, to send a Polaroid. Even that was very special. And I certainly, have enjoyed my fair share of those. Okay. Not from me, but from others to me. But oh man, I made a tape for her, and in the background on my little Sony CD deck, I had it playing that music from Call the Conqueror. I had it playing the love theme, card reading from Call the Conqueror, and it worked. That breakup didn't last long. It was really, I mean, I mailed it to her, and she watched it, and she just thought it was the great. And I actually had a friend, a gal friend who lived in New York, because the person I sent it to actually lived in California. I mean, I'd see her like all the time, but I would be traveling to conventions, and we'd see my girlfriend there. But anyway, this I had a gal friend who lived nearby me, and like I showed it to her. I'm like, all right, what do you think? Like, do you think this is going to do it? Do you think? And she just like broke into tears. And I guarantee you part of it is because that music is just some of the most beautiful fucking music you'll ever hear in your life. I mean, I really, next to maybe the score, James Horner's Mask of Zorro, next to that might be the most like beautiful, sweeping love music you can possibly hear. And if you've never heard James Horner's soundtrack for Mask of Zorro, just listen to like the Zorro theme and Diego's Goodbye. Those are two of the tracks on there that are just remarkable. I mean, you will be, your heart will swoon, I assure you. So anyway, just one last comment here on this. Blu-ray cases from Amazon. When you order Blu-rays from Amazon, the cases, they're almost always broken. What the fuck is this? I mean, I get it. Like, this cost me, what, $7? But for fuck's sake, it's way more common than not that these Blu-ray cases come with something broken about them whenever they come in. And it's all this cheap shit. I remember when Blu-rays first came out. The Blu-rays themselves are fairly tough. But the cases used to be these really thick affairs. And then they started going with this like thinner plastic and recyclable whatever. And oh man, that pissed me the fuck off, because now they're very flimsy. And this just came in today, and damn it, it's already broken. Anyway, whatever. We have other shit to talk about. though admittedly not wholly unrelated to what we were just discussing. So anyway, let's read the question here, and we're going to talk about conspiracy theories. We've got a few things to get into here. So let's start this off. Hey Stallion, I've heard you say in the past that pretty much everyone who is really into tech was influenced by Star Trek. Okay, well, I'll cut in on that part quick. Yes. I've hosted panels where I asked all of my panelists. I was like, all right, what got you into tech? You know, why are you here? And these are like activists and everything. You know, what got you into tech? And every single one of them would say Star Trek, Star Trek, Star Trek. I mean, they'd all rattle it off. You cannot downplay the amazing subversive effect that the Star Trek franchise has had on civilization entirely, you know, on the entire planet. It's really, really just an amazing thing. In fact, I'm kind of sad. I just missed an opportunity to catch William Shatner after a taping of Star Trek, or not taping, a viewing of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan in Worcester, Mass. He was going to be there, and damn it, I missed it. Very, very disappointed. Anyway, so yes, I do stand by that just about everyone who's really into tech in some form or fashion is influenced by Star Trek. Even, you know, real quick, even Steve Jobs, like, he was asked about Star Trek and he said, oh, just give me Star Trek. Like, that's literally what he said, that he was very much shooting for that. Not unironic, I suppose, that the latest Star Trek films all look like, you know, an Apple computer's wet dream. But anyway, let's read on with the question. But what part would you say movies like Tron have played? I know you're a fan because I think I saw a Tron figurine in your BDSM studio. And you are correct, sir. I think it's sir. Yes, I do have a Tron Funko Pop actually to my right, and it is literally of Tron. They only made a couple of them. There's one for Tron, and I think they made one of Sark, and of course I went with Tron. So what part do I think that movie? Well, I can think of a few movies. In fact, I mentioned this earlier, like Hackers, and I've talked about Hackers many times. That while movies like Tron and Hackers, while they don't accurately depict anything about computers, okay, or tech in general, I think they've been wildly influential. Not just for me. They've certainly been for me, but for other people, wildly influential in people getting into, you know, cybersecurity, you know, computer science in general, and a lot of these other things. I mean, they really, really have. So Tron is, of course, a classic from the early 80s, made by Disney of all things. And it is, you know, it has some of the initial use of CGI, but the CGI use in it isn't exactly like the grandest thing in history. The main thing about it is really the look itself, the design, the style, you know, a lot of the neon style that you get. I mean, I think the effects of Tron are still being felt today in a lot of like the synthwave movement and everything, which we might talk about that later. I mean, it's all over the place. Even if people have never seen Tron, they're still seeing I think the cultural byproducts and after effects of Tron being a thing, because it did influence so many people. I think it got a lot of people into like movie making too, like into the movie industry. Yeah, Tron was huge. I mean, you know, not like a wildly successful film. I mean, it's a miracle that we got Tron Legacy, right? It's an absolute miracle that we ended up getting a sequel that is a genuine direct sequel. In fact, I think I've talked about this before when I talked about Tron. So it seemed like for a little while, back in 2010, 2011, that Disney was really, really pushing hard with Tron, because it appeared they wanted to get into science fiction, and they had this ready-made franchise with some history, you know, that they could take advantage of, and they did with Tron Legacy. And then they also had the cartoon Tron Uprising, which was phenomenal. Only went one season. I have no idea what the ratings were. The reviews were largely positive. I had to imagine it was doing pretty well, but I think what actually happened is, I've talked about this before, I think when they bought Star Wars, even though Star Wars is, you know, space fantasy or whatever, people don't want to call it science fiction, you get it. It falls in with the line. I mean, how much does it borrow from, you know, from Asimov's Foundation series, right? I mean, everything. So yeah, I think when they bought Star Wars, they said, okay, we don't need Tron anymore, and we'll lock that back up in the vaults until we need it, which is a shame because Tron Legacy, the movie, did enough money to warrant a Tron 3. And there's been rumors here and there of a script for Tron 3 that could have been very interesting. But right now, Disney doesn't need it. I mean, they have the Marvel movies. They have Star Wars now. They have so many things. Maybe it'll be something that'll come back for their streaming service. I mean, it'd be a great idea for them to do like exclusive movies for their streaming service. And if one of those is Tron 3, I think they'd get some subscribers. I think that, or if they did like more for Tron Uprising or something, I think they'd do a little money on that, and like good money. And I think that's something they should really, really look into. Honestly, with the whole thing, because Disney has, again, their streaming service coming out in 2019. If I were them, I would get it to the point in pretty short order where I would kill, because of like the way that MoviePass is moving in on the movie industry, on theaters, on the movie theater industry. I would try and get it to the point where people don't go to the movies anymore to see Marvel movies. I know you think that sounds nuts. Okay. But eventually you're going to have diminishing returns, and even meaning that, this high that Marvel movies are riding is only going to last so long. But I think if you changed venue, like the only way you could see it is on Disney's streaming service, I think that would revitalize it when the time comes, because, it would just be this wild change of venue and it'd feel very exclusive. And I think it would get people excited about it. And honestly, maybe they could even, who knows, maybe they could get away from the rating system. That's going to be interesting to see, is how much does Disney rely upon a rating system or ratings, or like how kiddie do they make their streaming service when they do a lot of shit that isn't just for kids, obviously. So anyway, that's kind of a side tangent, but if I was Disney, I would be, if I wanted to do money and really lock people in, that's exactly what I would be doing. I would be pushing to where the only way you're going to see anything produced by Disney or Marvel or Star Wars or whatever is you've got to go to the streaming service. Like just kill the theater business. I don't want the theater business to die. I love going to the movies. I'm just saying, if I had that kind of sway, if I had the kind of the stroke and pull that Disney has, that's what I would be doing. But anyway, that's kind of a side note. Back to the actual matter at hand. So yeah, what part would you say the movies Tron have played as far as getting people into computers and all that? Yeah, like I said, I think huge. I think it's massive, because it gave you this other dimension, because the movie Tron, if you don't know, I mean, I'm not going to give you the full outline here, but basically it deals with it's the idea that inside the computer, programs are sort of alive, like they're conscious. If you've ever seen the CGI animated series Reboot, it's very, Reboot totally copied Tron in many ways, even though it was Reboot was enjoyable in and of itself. But yeah, I think it added a dimension, and it made you think, figuratively and well, literally in the story and metaphorically in the real world. It added a dimension to computing where, and I think a lot of kids were like, "Ooh, is that what's going on inside my computer?" Like that's so exciting, And I think it made a lot of video gamers out of people. Even though actually, so Stephanie, Ellen, and I, we all went to Fun Spot a couple weekends ago. And Ellen's like, Brian, play Tron. I've never seen anybody play this. I'm like, okay, I'll play it. Like, that game kind of sucks, right? Except for when you're playing Light Cycle, and even then it kind of sucks. Not that Tron has a bad history of video games. Like, Discs of Tron was actually kind of cool. I remember playing that. I think it was on ColecoVision back in the day. The Tron 2.0 is one of the best FPSs of all time. And there's other, some of the other games that have come out are interesting, but Tron 2.0 is actually a phenomenal fucking game. So anyway, so Tron, Tron is huge. I mean, like I say, it made a lot of gamers out of people because it just, I don't know, it made the world of the Electron and the Switch, it turned it into something that seemed a little more visceral, a little more understandable, a little more real, a little more relatable. Even though it's not the reality, it still felt that way, especially if you grew up with it. And again, the look of Tron was just so cool and so unique. To this day, it's so unique. There's nothing else quite like it. And it really stood out especially when you watch Tron Legacy, just how big of a deal that is. Tron Legacy, I think, actually had a very interesting message as far as tech. I mean, the idea of creating that has a very what's the term I'm looking for? Transhumanist, shall we say, message to it, I think. And to some that's good, to some that's bad, to some that's a cult, to some that's the future. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I love both of those movies. I think they're both very groundbreaking in what they did. I don't know that Tron Legacy will be seen as inspirational or as seminal in people's minds as getting them into computer science or into other industries or whatever. I don't know it's going to be seen as that kind of inspirational, but damn, that's a great movie, and certainly the original Tron, great movie as well. I mean, by most metrics, Tron Legacy is actually the better film, if you were to go try to look at it objectively with acting and a lot of other things. But not that the original Tron is a lack for actors, right? I mean, you have Jeff Bridges, you have Bruce Boxleitner, you have Peter Jurassic, you have David Warner. I mean, you've got great actors there. It's such a weird little film. So yeah, I think that movie's done a lot. I think that that and I could think of some others. Hackers, like I said, I think is even though Hackers is pure bullshit, it made the idea of being even just a script kiddie or something, right? It made it cool. It gave it that edge. I mean, everything's about being cool, right? And did it make it cool. So that's that's another one that I think can be easily pointed at. Some people might want to say War Games. I don't think so. I think War Games just has a couple of memeable moments in the film, and then that's what made it so interesting. But I don't remember watching War Games and thinking, oh yeah, I want to be like Matthew Broderick or something. Now, watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off, well, that's a bit of a different story. But anyway, I don't see War Games as that influential of a movie. As far as any other ones that were where it makes me think, oh man, I really wanted to be into computers and all that. Like Megaforce, that's one where you really want to get into tech because you love all the high tech that they're putting on display. I've talked about the movie Megaforce a long time ago in a Sovereign Tech. Actually, I think it was an entire HackSec segment maybe, where I was saying that, a lot of the technology they showed off in Megaforce is still being developed and getting worked on today. And I think that movie was very much some people claim Star Trek is predictive programming, right? To get people, prepared for some kind of future, to get them used to wild technologies and wild ideas and everything. I think Megaforce was a big time attempt at that because it didn't really have a marketing machine behind it or anything. But anyway, yeah, it's funny. I can't exactly. I'm sure there are other movies out there that would have inspired me to be into computers. Daryl was one. I don't know if anybody remembers Daryl like that. That comes to mind for me. I think that was actually a TV movie. But other than that, I can't really think of films. I mean, yeah, Star Trek. Just about any science fiction would get you into computers and get you into tech in general, really. You can think of a lot of TV shows, right? Even the one that remember Automan that kind of looked like Tron, if people watch that, or even Knight Rider and things like this, where it gets you used to the idea of AI and all that. There's a funny thing. If I was getting everybody ready for the AI future, I would do a good Knight Rider, I don't want to say remake, but in fact, there was supposed to be that movie, wasn't there? But that would get people into, instead of, hey, Alexa, hey, Kit, right? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So again, there are movies that I think have been just as influential, perhaps, as Star Trek. Certainly Hackers, and definitely Tron. I think would have gotten people really, really into tech. If somebody said that, oh yeah, I watched Tron and I was like, oh, I want a computer for the rest of my life, I'd totally believe them. I'd say, yeah. I mean, it's a completely valid statement to make. Same with Hackers, because again, it gave you a culture to kind of buy into, and it gave you the reasons, that being it's cool, the reasons, to get into coding and and whatever, gray hat, white hat, black hat, whatever kind of hacking you get into. So okay, let's move on to another question here. this is in relation to a recent Sovereign Tech Prime episode. In fact, it was I think it was the last one that I did with where Ellen and Stephanie were on. And it's about conspiracy theories. It says, in the Aliens episode, Brian said, quote, "This is not conspiracy theory," end quote. So what I think he's talking about is the episode where I said that, or where we were talking about that supposedly people would see, statistically people would see, there was a study done that people would see aliens arriving or news about aliens to be exciting and not scary, which was kind of shocking to both, to all three of us, to Stephanie, Ellen, and I. And so, yeah, I was talking about a very specific set of papers from, I believe, the 1950s or early 60s that the government did, where they did their own kind of, with think tanks, where they did their own kind of research, and they said more or less that if the U.S. government found out that there are aliens, they wouldn't tell you about it. And in fact, they'd probably engage in something we just mentioned, predictive programming, to get you ready for it, perhaps. So, and this gets into like the Majestic 9 and all that. I mean, the papers themselves actually exist. The report itself exists that says that, and a lot of people like to point at it. It's like not the Dunning's report or something like that, but it's something like that. Anyway, so yes, that's what I meant by it's not conspiracy theory. It's an actual paper that's in Congress and that that's been looked over and you can read yourself. But reading on with the question, I can't be sure what he meant, but I suspect that he meant that he had the documents. Yes, that is what I meant. That it was a fact and not conspiracy theory. I think language like that helps push the idea that conspiracies don't exist, which is absurd. So, okay, so this is a comment made. I agree with you. Like saying, here's the challenge with doing podcasting or with doing any kind of transmission media, especially one way where you can't directly interact and people can't ask for clarification like you did, which you understood exactly what I was saying, which is kind of the point, is that it's effective shorthand. It may not be effective ideology wise, it may not be the best use, but it's shorthand that I often find helpful. And there's a lot of things like this where you but where you find yourself using various types of shorthand, whether that shorthand is helpful or not, you use it to get the point across very quickly. And certainly when I'm doing a podcast with, two other people, especially two other ladies that have brilliant things to say at all times, I'm going to, I got to get my idea out there quick. Okay. But yeah, so the problem with talking about conspiracy theories and, adding to the idea out there that conspiracy theories are all, nutty and that they're all crazy and that they don't exist, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's a problem because conspiracies do exist. I firmly believe in quite a few conspiracies, not exactly conspiracies that, the Alex Jones types and others would put out there, which let's be clear here. As much as Alex Jones might be right on one or two things out of a million, only one or two things. I mean, when you're all in on this sort of stuff, when you're all in on conspiracy theories, oftentimes those are the kind of people that, they're really doing the ruining of the popular ideas and concepts of, the conspiracies that actually exist and eventually get proven, right? You think Gulf of Tonkin, some of these other ones. There's legitimate documents, about this sort of thing. That's why Alex Jones there's even the meme of Alex Jones where, and I use it myself where I'll kind of jab at him saying, I've got the documents, right? Because that's sort of what you need now. You can't just make these wild claims anymore, which is good. But at the same time, just like you want conspiracy theorists to have the documents, you also, on the other side, you don't want people just writing off conspiracies as being, whole cloth and non-existent, because a lot of them do. But I'm going to go a little step further on this. So I agree. And I'm going to try and be careful about that sort of thing. And if anyone listening, I know I have other podcasters listening to the sound of my voice right now. I would recommend too that let's be careful with how we talk about conspiracy theories and conspiracies in general. So, but I want to go a little bit of a step further. Now, I was on School Sucks some time back. It might have been one of the Conspirathon episodes, and I broke down the 5 or 6 different types of conspiracies. Okay. And generally, and the irony in breaking that down and the point that I was bringing it up is that or the reason that I brought it up, was because we concentrate so much on the malevolent conspiracies. Okay. Like we concentrate on, oh, it's the New World Order, it's blah, 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 which I don't think that there's, and see right there, like I'm saying, oh, it's a New World Order. I'm already making fun of the idea. I do think the idea is ludicrous, but not because it's a conspiracy. I just think that it's humanly impossible for there to be, outside of Hulk Hogan, with the NWO, outside of something out of a booking office. I don't think that an actual singular government body or, like a New World Order that itself, the Bilderberg group and all this stuff, that they themselves, this one group, has all this control on the planet. No, I don't believe that. I believe that there are a bunch of secret groups and secret societies, and I could believe that there's 20 NWOs, but there's not one NWO. You get my point? I mean, even in wrestling, you had red and black and white and black. Sorry, I can't stop with the jokes. I'll stop. But I'm serious. I think there could be 20 NWOs. There could be 100, but I don't think that there's just one. I don't think there's just the globalists. I don't believe that at all. But anyway, if I just toss it out of hand that when somebody's talking about the NWO and I say, oh, conspiracy theorist or something, yeah, that's not helpful, because some of the point that the person's bringing up when they're talking about the NWO, when they're talking about a New World Order, is totally legitimate. And maybe accurate, to a point. And there's things that are getting discussed in that conversation and in that context that will never get discussed on mainstream news, but it's important. So yeah, I think, I mentioned this comment because it was made on Patreon, for one, but for two, because it's a great point that we shouldn't just write off conspiracies out of hand. Now, again, the other reason that I want to bring this up is that we do concentrate way too much on the malevolent conspiracies. There could be very benevolent conspiracies. One could argue that just about every anarchist is engaged in a benevolent conspiracy, as in, yes, we are absolutely conspiring to, lessen government power, even perhaps, subvert or depose peacefully governments, and hopefully peacefully. I know not all do, but but those are ones that are trying to free humanity, right? These activists and all that. That's a benevolent conspiracy. And a lot of it's being done in quiet. And, oh, you bet your ass it is, because it's being done on Signal. It's being done with PGP encryption. It's being done. It's a conspiracy under every definition of the term. So we also don't want to instantly, so while at the same time we don't want to just write off conspiracies, we also don't want to instantly think that when somebody says conspiracy or conspiracy theory or something like that, that it's instantly malevolent either. Okay, one could talk about, in fact, a lot of your, more conventional. In fact, that's a great word to use. Tell you what, conventional is awesome, because conventional means that you are talking about the popular mindset. Okay, so when you say conventional conspiracy theorists, then, not that you still don't want to just write people off without, debunking what they have to say, or if they don't have any proof, then, well, you don't have to really debunk either. But, you can use the word conventional in front of a lot of things, and then people understand that you're talking about, the popular mindset or the popular opinion of what it is. So, in a lot of conventional conspiracy theory circles, you have the idea of, say, people talk about the Rosicrucians, or, maybe even the Freemasons, if you wanted to go that far, or, all these different secret society groups that were coming out of the Enlightenment, or, maybe a bit before. When one could look at, and maybe the Rosicrucians themselves really felt this way, that they were actually, they weren't the bad guys, and they weren't, trying to hurt anybody. They were actually trying to free humanity. If you read what, say, the actual Illuminati that actually existed under Adam Weishaupt, the Bavarian Illuminati, some of their basic concepts are actually great. Getting rid of religion, getting rid of monarchies, getting rid of all this different stuff. When you start piling on some stuff, you might find things that are concerning. And if people are getting killed, of course, I don't agree with it. But you get my point, is that, some of these conspiracies historically, today, with today's, mindset, especially more of a freedom mindset, would actually be more benevolent. Like, no, okay, yeah, I get what they're doing. These are people, these are activists going for social change. Just at the time, the idea of social change and activism weren't exactly, those weren't terms used in Europe. So, and I'm not defending the Rosicrucians or Freemasonry, by the way. Please don't confuse me. I'm not saying that they were doing something great, but I'm just saying that when we use the term conspiracy, we want to be careful with that. I agree with that, but also we want to be not just careful in that we're writing it off as a conspiracy because it's a conspiracy and that conspiracies don't exist, but let's also be careful and understand that there can be benevolent conspiracies. There can be good conspiracies, not just bad ones. And I think that's a very important delineation to make. And maybe new terms are needed. This is something that like I just said, how terms like activism or social change or things like this, like those are terms and words that didn't even exist, perhaps 100, 200 years ago. But how important are they today? Activists are incredibly important, of course. So maybe we need some new terms for this sort of stuff. I don't know what they are. I'm not about to go making them up. But yeah, I like this, and I think there should be caution, put to it. In fact, it's one of the most common questions I get asked. Like, what conspiracies do I believe? Well, I'll tell you one that I firmly believe. I firmly believe that, how to put this? Well, I think there is a giant conspiracy of history in that we really don't know the truth of history. And history is tough because, right, history is really not a science. It can never really be. It's kind of, people just say it's a science because it's sort of inductive, but you really only, by and large, you can only experience history as a fact by being there, right? So, that gets into kind of muddy waters, shall we say. But anyway, I do believe that history, our understanding, our timeline of history, like when, kind of civilization started, things like this, I think are way off base. I've talked about that many times, that I think that there have been previously advanced civilizations, and I think that even what we know of past civilizations that we know of, even the Romans or the Greeks, we don't have the complete picture that is available to us to see. And I say that because it is a fact that archaeologists 100 years ago and even previous were literally covering up the evidence from these civilizations. My favorite example to bring up is when they found Pompeii and they saw all these lewd acts, being portrayed on frescoes on the wall. And so they took some plaster and they covered them up because it offended their Christian sensibilities. And we were to pretend that Rome was, not the not the lustful society necessarily that it was, or at least some parts of it. So that's that. There's a conspiracy I firmly believe is that history is in many ways covered up. Now, I don't think there's aliens, but parts of perhaps some very interesting and advanced parts of history have, in my opinion, have been, or not just opinion, they literally have. We know that it's happened, have been covered up. So, sure, conspiracies do exist, and I think that qualifies as a conspiracy because you are hiding something from the general public, in doing that, and it's to affect the mindset of the general public, in doing so, and that's a crime, quite frankly, against humanity. I mean, when it comes to history, yeah, sometimes, just the historians and archaeologists just haven't caught up with, the past few decades of research. Like, here's an interesting thing. So, pretty much up until Gene Shoemaker, okay, would this be the 60s? It was not proven that space rocks, meteors, ever hit the Earth. It wasn't until Gene Shoemaker did his, which, Shoemaker-Levy, right? That's where that naming came from. It wasn't until, he did his tremendous research in Arizona that, with the crater, that it was finally accepted as scientific fact that, yes, space rocks do hit the Earth. This wasn't until the 1960s. So the idea of like meteors and all this other stuff creating cataclysmic events and creating all kinds of havoc and altering the future of humanity and altering what happened to perhaps various civilizations and everything that some of these things could have wiped out, wasn't even accepted. Like that wasn't considered like possible. I mean, it was considered possible by some, but it wouldn't have held up to scientific scrutiny. And honestly, I think a lot of archaeologists, they're still basing their work off of E.A. Wallace Budge. And, well, first you got to prove that Budge actually wrote all that, but then also, Budge's work is from the 19th century. But now you have this new data that, well, maybe this civilization or this here got wrecked by some kind of meteor, or this got wrecked by this, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, they always ignore cataclysmic, or they seem to regularly ignore cataclysmic evidence, when doing historical, deduction. And, that's not a conspiracy necessarily, but let's just be clear that it does add credence to the idea that, well, maybe we don't have a very clear picture of history. And at points, it's also been, blatantly covered up. But anyway, so there you go. Yes, I will be more careful. I agree it's harmful to just write stuff off by using the term conspiracy theory. I'm with you on that. Okay, actually, same person also asked, this is another question here. Same person also asked, where are places that I could go to talk about Stirner? Now, of course, they're talking about Max Stirner, and who has come up the past few weeks on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes during the Q&A segments there. And, well, to answer the question, to talk about egoism and all that, I kind of have some bad news. There aren't really, and I've looked, I mean, there's a couple of Facebook groups, that I suppose, I don't know the name off the top of my head because I don't mess around on Facebook, but I'm just going to kind of spare you the trouble. They're not really worth their time. There's some forums that I've messed with over the years, and it just gets taken over by, this is a real problem with Stirner. He can get interpreted in a lot of ways. I don't think he can get interpreted in a lot of ways. I think he says a lot of things that are very clear cut, that stand in contrast to people that want to use egoism to bolster communism, or that Stirner was a proponent of communism. I mean, under egoism, yes, you could have a communist society. Why? Because you're the individual, and you could create a union of egoists, based around communism if you really wanted to. So, I mean, you have, ultimate choice under egoism. So it's not like you can't do it, but their claim is that, and you're going to run into a ton of them when you go into these groups, okay, is that, oh, no, Stirner was a communist. He was, he totally supports communism, blah, 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 which I've done past specials for Patreon only where I've completely debunked that and shown across the board where Stirner was absolutely not a communist. But regardless, you're going to run into a lot of them. You're going to run into a lot of people who are just ready to break out the AK-47s. I mean, it's kind of in jest, but also at the same time, it's not. You're not going to be really pleased with what you find out there with a lot of egoism. I mean, a lot of you think of guys like Wolfie Landstreicher and some others who were, a lot of these other figures who are kind of, shall we say, I don't want to call them authorities because they'd hate that, but kind of thought leaders, you could say, in egoism. They don't go online. like you're lucky if you can get an email to Wolfie, and I don't even agree with Wolfie 100% in ways. So sadly, in my opinion, there's really not that great group out there. Now, if there's somebody listening to this and they know of a great place where you can actually get into more of an intellectual conversation around egoism, let me know, because I'd like to know about it too, because I haven't really found it. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to actually find those spots. It's tough to find, those places online where you can really get into that. I think was it unionofelgoists.com or something? They used to have a forum that was pretty good, but I don't even know if that site's still around anymore. I mean, it's very tough. And it's tough to, here's the other thing. Look, I mean, I love a good joke. I am all about the laughter, and all that, and memes. Yep. Great. No argument from me there. But it's tough to even find groups where that's not all it is. It feels like for a lot of people, egoism is just their opportunity to just, crack a bunch of jokes and call everything spook and whatever. And look, I believe me, I love humor and I love having a great time and doing all that stuff. I absolutely do. Okay. I'm just saying that I really don't know of the place where you can really talk kind of at a more intellectual, serious level about egoism. I just don't know that they're out there. So I appreciate you asking about it. I don't know that I'm prepared to create that place, that does that. Anyone's welcome to. Maybe somebody has an egoist Discord channel. I don't know, that where that could happen. But yeah, if somebody listening to this does know, let me know. I know of the there's two. I know there's like 2 Facebook groups, but even there, it's all just, and shit talking's great. I have no problem with it. Please don't misunderstand me. But, if you're looking for a more intellectual discussion, I'm not exactly sure where to go for that on these sorts of things. But, there's podcasts that might talk about it here and there. But yeah, that's what I got. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty sad. And this is why I've brought up quite a few times, is that there's nobody that's really tried to evolve or bring to the next level much of, Stirner's work. Like, take egoism to that next level, get us closer to that egoist epoch. You don't have anybody really working on that. And I think part of the reason is that a lot of people that even do read, the ego in its own or the unique in its property, depending upon your translation, that they take it seriously. They just use it as a chance to, and hey, rip on ANCAPs, rip on ANCOMs, rip on whoever the hell you want to rip on. Go for it. But they just use it for that. And they don't actually like, okay, where do we take this? How do we get to the next level? Again, how do we get to that egoist epoch? And it doesn't help that, like, Wolfie Lawnstriker in the unique in his property, in the introduction, he's pretty much saying that Stirner was bullshitting when he talked about how you have like the 3 different epochs of man or of humanity, and that, and that there is never going to be an egoist epoch. Like that's kind of crap. I don't agree with Wolfie on that. I can see where Stirner could have been sarcastic at certain points, but I also think in other points he was dead serious, in what he was like. Was it the spiritual epoch, the materialist epoch? I think I forget all 3 of them, but the last one was the egoist epoch. But yeah, I don't feel really that anybody's kind of taken it to that next level. There was a time when they were, during the days of Benjamin Tucker, late 19th century, early 20th century. You had actual like newsletters going out there about egoism. You have some modern attempts, Dear Geist, right? Some of these other ones. But yeah, it's, I don't know. No one's, I don't feel like anybody's really forwarding the whole egoist conversation. Not to my taste anyway. But anyway, enough of that. So ironically, this next question I actually have, it's a relationship question, and I don't know how serious it is, but they specifically said they don't want it in the relationship rhombus. Okay. But I'll read it here. Let's see. Bisav, that's how it starts off. You seem to have tremendous luck with women. Okay. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but what would you say is your one magic trick? What's your game? And I want to hear from you, not relationship rhombus. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know how serious you are. Actually, there's one patron I know who calls me Bisav all the time, and I don't think this is him, who is, has great questions, and is very serious when he says yo-yo Bisav, and I love it. But I don't think this person's maybe this is the hint that they're not being very serious. But I will, I don't have a magic trick. Even though this is the BDSM studio, the Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, I like to think that I practice what would have been called magic back in the in the Middle Ages, which is really just science. But my magic trick, what's my game? So I don't have any game. I am not. What's that idiot's name who wrote? Oh hell! What did he write? The game, is that the name of the book? Right? Who's that? Neil Strauss. Ridiculous. Can't stand the guy. Even his book where like he recanted everything and he's like, oh, and I just want monogamy. Okay, whatever, buddy. Anyway, just such a joke. So I don't have a game. I just don't. And I don't like to think of it as a trick. Okay, here, look, if you're looking to and judging by you're looking to get a woman in your life, I'm assuming, since you said that I somehow have tremendous luck with them or something. If I'm going to answer this seriously, I'll just put it this way. Be patient. Now, that doesn't mean just wait around, okay, for someone to come up to you. I mean, that can certainly be helpful as well. But just be incredibly patient. I think we talked about this actually in the last relationship rhombus, where somebody asked, hey, I don't want to wait forever for the right moment. Should I wait for the right time? Blah, blah, blah. Just be really patient with everything. Do not be, because patience is akin to confidence, and confidence is, well, as Jack Palance used to say, confidence is very sexy, don't you think? And, confidence is sexy. Okay. So yeah, just be very, very patient. That's, and don't push. Don't push. Just be patient. And if you want to, if there's somebody in your life that you want to get with, if there's a gal that you're, really interested in, just, be very friendly, be there with her, and just be super, super patient. And the opportunity will present itself. What's the old adage, the old saying, good things come to those who wait. Yeah, in a lot of ways, there's a reason that adage is out there, I think. It's not always true. There are times where you want to strike hard, strike first, no mercy, sir, Cobra Kai. But, no, I'm kidding. But, no, there are times where you don't want to wait. But I think for a lot of the deeper things in life, waiting is a very good thing. And being very patient and biding your time. Because let me tell you, here's probably your concern, right? Is that some other guy is going to come swoop this gal off her feet, perhaps, that you're interested in. If you are genuinely the guy, if you are that good of a person to where you are bringing beautiful things into this person's life, otherwise, please don't get into a relationship. If you are bringing beautiful things into this person's life, you're that damned good, okay? You're that great of a guy. Or maybe this is a gal, gal going after a gal, which I am 100% supportive of, obviously. I'll tell you, just be patient, because those other guys, and be her friend, and really be her friend. And guys and gals can be friends, by the way. They really can. But be her friend. And, as this, the wrong guy is going to keep fucking up. And all you have to do, and this goes true, this isn't just true for relationships. This is true for a lot of things. This is true for, hell, celebritarians. This is true for, just about any nuisance in your life. You just give them, metaphorically, peacefully, you give them enough rope, okay? And eventually these people hang themselves. The wrong guy will always hang himself. And because, a lot of people out there, they're straight up, selfish, and I use that in the pejorative. Being self-centered, I think, is okay, but selfish to the point, selfish means that you actually hurt somebody else in the action of self-centeredness. Self-centeredness doesn't necessarily mean that you hurt somebody else, okay? Or self-interested. Self-interested is one of my favorite terms. There's nothing wrong with self-interest. Enlightened self-interest is the very heart of egoism, in my opinion. And it's one of the ways that humanity goes through life. One of the very ethical and wonderful ways humanity goes through life. But the selfish, person will eventually, the selfish and the sociopath, they can only last maybe a year before the cracks in the facade start to show. Okay. And that's why I say, just give them enough rope. Eventually they'll hang themselves and they'll be out of the way. Of course, the great hope is that, a kid doesn't get sidled on along with all that, because then that's when, the rope doesn't seem to matter anymore. But regardless, just be patient. Okay. And be there and be the best. If it's a guy, be the best man that you can be, and there's not enough. I think I've said this perhaps somewhere on social media or something, where I've made this claim, but I think it's true, is that you have a lot of guys who are very, very concerned and concentrated on making, this great world for men. Like you're trying to get laws to favor men or to help men, or I don't know. Like there seems to be so much effort in trying to change society to somehow respect men or something like this. And instead of spending your time, you have so many people working on that. I mean, you have MRAs, you got all these other people, whatever. Instead of men just working on being the best fucking men that they can be. And I assure you that there's no law I'm not tooting my own horn. Okay. I've had people tell me that I'm a really great guy. I've had ladies tell me that, men tell me that. Okay. So I'm taking their word for it. I'm a very manly man, quite frankly. That's what they say. I'm a big guy. I like to think that I express a degree of machismo at times, even, nothing's legislated against me. No one's yelling at me. I walk through the heart of, multiple liberal areas. Dartmouth, all these. Nobody's stopping me from being a guy. Nobody. And there's no law in the books that's stopping me from being a man. So don't bother. Just spend your time being a great man, reading books, working out. And in your definition of what makes a great man, it's subjective. That could be anything. Okay, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing stopping you. All right, unless you're concerned about, then when it turns into divorce court, okay, sure, then there's a whole bunch of bullshit that's going on there. But where's the real problem there? Is the problem the way that the laws act against men, or is the problem marriage? Like that ancient, useless institution. Unfortunately, that seems to be kind of a cultural meme going around now, is that marriage isn't as useful as it once was. Its purpose is falling away, and that it's not the entry into adulthood that it used to be. Now it's almost like the end of it, or the finality of it. So, and look, if you're married, it's fine. I'm really not knocking you. I'm just saying, let's strike the root here, okay? And let's really question, all right, where's the problems with all this stuff? And it might not be that that the guy, on the guy behind the desk wearing a black robe, okay, is somehow some kind of man hater. In fact, I dare say he's quite the opposite. So my point is, be patient and just spend that time being the best person you can be. No, forget about even being a man. Just being the best person you can be. Whatever that ends up looking like. And that can be different for everybody. And you certainly don't try and be what that other person wants you to be. Just be you. That's really key. Otherwise, that's going to express itself later in the next 5 to 10 years or something. That's going to be bad. Okay. And I say this all the time. If you is eating Doritos and watching TV on a couch or something well, then that's your best. If that's really what you want to do, then no judgment from me. Do it. That's okay. And maybe you'll find somebody that's into that too. Fucking awesome. I've seen it. Okay. That's no insult coming from me. I mean that. I use that as an example to say to you, that your best you is very subjective. Okay. But concentrate on that. Get the biggest bag of Cool Ranch that you can. It's okay. Stop worrying about trying to force civilization and society and governments and whoever else to respect you and to do this and blah, blah, blah. And hey, look at me. And what about me? And blah, blah. No. Be patient and just be the best fucking person you can. I get this asked all the time. What do you want us to do, Stallion? Better. That's what I want. Be better. Do better. Sorry, got a little heated. But I hear this shit all the time, and it drives me nuts. It just drives me nuts. How do I do this? How do I do that? I love getting relationship questions because, even, me, not everybody has all the relationship stuff licked. The human condition is so varied, so dynamic. There's no way one person has all the answers for how all this stuff works. And we're all individuals. It's good to ask these kinds of questions, but some of the whiny shit that goes on, and I'm not saying this person was whiny. Like I said, I think they were joking around. Okay, but come on. This part of it isn't hard. Just be patient. Give the, if you're what's going on in your head is that guy or gal isn't good enough for that gal, then be patient because that will eventually show. But in the meantime, you have the freedom of time to be the most amazing person they're ever going to encounter. Do that. That's what I do. So, what I've done. And I felt that way for a very long time. The only time, for example, so for me, my best me, part of my best me is having a, what could be described, say, as a bodybuilder's physique. Okay. It's important to me to be fit, look good, all that, look good naked. And I have no problems in saying that that's part of the reason, or that's a major part of the reason, is to just look good naked. And I'm not saying that I look good naked either. I'm just, at least I'm trying. But that's not for everybody, but it is for me. So when I was married for 7 years, that was like the one time in my life, aside from, a point when I was like preteen, that was the one time in my life where I was severely overweight. I weighed over 300 pounds. Okay. And as soon as I was out of that marriage, step one, start losing weight, get back down to that. And I didn't have anybody else in my life. I wasn't even planning on having another relationship. What happened with Stephanie? I mean, when she asked me out, how could I say no? But before that, I wasn't planning on having another relationship ever. And, but in so doing, still, like, whoever I was going to encounter, whoever I was going to have as a friend or whatever, I wanted to, be the best that I could possibly be. I would just be patient. Things will come around, and just be the best stallion that I can be. And so, started dropping the weight, and everything. And it didn't take long to get away from 300 pounds. But, when I was in the marriage and all that, well, I mean, that's when we start to let things fall apart sometimes. And I was, incredibly unhappy. So, of course, that reflected itself in my health and in my unattentiveness to my own desires and what I wanted out of life and everything. So, anyway, yes, when you have the opportunity, when there's no one in your life, when you're waiting for that gal, okay, and you're being patient, work on you. Okay, that's the moral of that whole story. So now we've gone over an hour, and God damn it, I wanted to tell you about something. And this is, oh man, so we got your album of the week for you, and I've been dying to tell you about this one. So total thanks to Ellen, of course, for introducing me to this. I mean, wow, hot damn. It's just one guy as far as I know, and his name is Perturbator. Okay, Peturbator. It's in the show notes for this episode. Now, he has a few albums and like a couple EPs, but particularly, I'll give you one if you want to start off with. It's called Dangerous Days. And this is awesome. I mean, this is great shit. It's synthwave. It's electronic, and has that 80s kind of flash to it. But sometimes it's kind of dark. Other times it's like it's something, an action score out of something. Some of it's very danceable. I mean, it's just really, really cool. There's some, and there's points where they're singing and it's not all instrumental or not all synth. Just badass. If you like Gunship or I'm trying to think, like Laserhawk, some of these other ones like that. If you've never heard Perturbator, you are in for a ride. And one of my favorite things, the cover art that this guy's out of France, young guy. The artwork that he does is so hot. It is so sexy. I mean, like, there's nude women on it, demons, and pentagrams and everything. Oh, it's everything. I feel so understood, when I do it, and the music's great. And like even Stephanie and I were listening to it the other day when we were driving, and she's like, "Oh, this is so cool," and it is so cool. Just tremendous music. So great taste as usual, from Ellen. But man, you've got to check out Perturbator if you haven't. Every album's worth it. I've even bought a couple of the later ones because you can't really find them elsewhere. I mean, it just fantastic. So Perturbator, if you're into synthwave, if you're into like, some darker electronic, or even, I mean, some of it's very heartfelt too. And some of it's just outright cool, like, like action adventure kind of cool, or just cool in general. I mean, you're in for a ride. And actually, if you're going for a ride, it's awesome music to listen to, let me tell you. So anyway, Perturbator, Dangerous Days, it's from 2014, that album particularly, but he has one that came out just in 2017 as well. Man, you listen to all of it and then call me in the morning. He'll thank me. He'll thank me later. So, all right, there's your album of the week. Anyway, we'll wrap this up now. Yeah, other Patreon content to come out. We've got some more. I think we may be able to get into some more hentai reviews this month. Should be starting another audiobook in April, and we've got. I mean, there's just a ton of shit to come out. Also want to say thank you to everybody that had such kind words about the short story that I wrote for Star Trek Forbidden Frontiers. I'm glad you enjoyed that. I had some questions asked about it, but I might go into there's a lot in that. I'll tell you, there are a lot of Easter eggs. There are a lot of references to rare episodes. There's even references to stuff that happens in Star Trek Continues in there. Nothing that would like interfere with it being part of a broader canon in any way, but part of the the franchise canon. Not that obviously Forbidden Frontiers isn't going to would never be considered canon, but I'm trying to make it separate enough so that it could be kind of like what Peter David did with Star Trek New Frontier. Some of the best books ever written, but anyway, yeah, there's a lot of things in there that are really, and some actually, you wouldn't think with that kind of erotica, there's actually some very new science, like the dermal photoreceptors. I mean, not a new idea necessarily in Star Trek, but for it to have a scientific name, that's kind of a new concept that they found in certain fish. But anyway, there you have it. Thank you for the kind words on that. If you haven't read it, of course, you can go to zog.email and look at all the past issues of the Sovereign Tech newsletter, and you can find the short stories in there, or you can find them on Patreon itself, because I also share them with patrons exclusive, or not exclusively, but you get them in the Patreon as part of your subscription. They're in there in your feed. So not in your podcast feed, but in your Patreon feed. So, okay. Anyway, that's it for this week, for this week's Q&A. Great questions. Please keep them coming. We are kind of low on questions for the Patreon Q&A. A lot of people are flooding me with them for the Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, but we definitely I like getting into the deeper stuff here as well. So, send them in if you've got them, and again, lots more Patreon content to come out this month, of course, because we're just getting started. I will see you on the other side.